I grew up playing the basketball with the boys, so like it's always been physical and feisty, and like that's what it is, and you got to find a way.
Caitlin Clark, one of the league's most talked about rising stars, recently stood alongside Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull in a bold and unexpected move that sent shockwaves through the WNBA. This surprising decision has shaken far more than just the fan base. It has sparked intense discussion, heated debate, and growing concern about the future of women's basketball across the league. What exactly brought these players together in taking this stand? And why has the league become so uneasy? These women ignited a movement. For months, fans have filled arenas and tuned in from every corner of the country, watching their favorite players push themselves to the limit both physically and mentally. They have battled through injuries, fought through pain, and given up comfort because of their passion for basketball. In doing so, they became symbols of courage, resilience, and hope. They were never just players. They became the foundation that helped carry the league forward. But behind the roaring crowds and unforgettable highlights, a much darker reality was slowly taking shape. It was a story filled with neglect, untreated injuries, and a league that too often looked the other way. The truth could no longer be ignored. The statement that followed was far from polished or carefully prepared. It was honest, powerful, and impossible to forget. These women were no longer simply asking for answers. They were exposing a system that treated its biggest stars as if they were replaceable. At this moment, the conversation is about far more than basketball. The WNBA now faces more than just the consequences of the fire these women have started. Respect, accountability, and basic decency are all being put to the test. At the center of everything is Caitlin Clark, the rookie who turned every game into must-watch basketball. She was more than talented. She stayed composed under pressure, knocked down deep shots, and saw plays before anyone else did. She quickly became part of basketball history. Fans packed arenas wherever she played because they knew they were witnessing something truly special. Standing beside her is Sophie Cunningham, a fearless veteran who represents determination, passion, and relentless toughness. Fans admired not only her scoring but also the courage and fight that made her who she is. Then there is Lexi Hull, the hardworking competitor who constantly did the difficult work without always receiving the headlines. She chased loose balls, absorbed hard contact, and never stopped competing. She reminded her teammates that heart and determination matter just as much as talent. All they have ever asked for is the respect and dignity they have earned. But will the WNBA finally recognize the value of its biggest stars, or does it risk losing the heartbeat of the game itself? More importantly, are we watching the beginning of something much bigger? This story is only beginning to unfold. When silence becomes a form of betrayal, Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hull chose to stand for something greater than wins, rebounds, or points. They were no longer just athletes. They had become powerful symbols. They came to represent the promise of women's basketball finally receiving the recognition it deserved. A league that had once been overlooked was now inspiring young girls everywhere. These players poured their hard work, determination, and sacrifice into the game they loved. Yet the very league that was meant to protect them let them down. Where proper care should have existed, there was neglect. Where honest answers should have been given, there was only silence, and with that silence came broken trust. The storm did not begin with a game-winning shot or a memorable highlight. It began with pain and silence. Caitlin Clark's injury marked the first major turning point. One moment the rookie was lighting up the court with her brilliance. The next, she was lying on the hardwood, clutching her leg. The entire arena fell silent in disbelief. Fans could only hope the injury was not serious. They waited anxiously for good news. But the truth soon became impossible to ignore. She had suffered a significant injury. Across the country, arenas were filled with concern and quiet disappointment. The league's brightest star, the player who had brought record attention and unprecedented crowds, had suddenly been sidelined. The question everyone kept asking was, how could this happen without stronger safeguards? Then came Lexi Hull's frightening moment. Fans cried out in horror after she took a brutal hit to the eye and stumbled away with blood running down her face. But what happened afterward raised even greater concerns. She returned to play without receiving the medical scans and safety evaluations every athlete deserves. Before long, social media exploded with reactions. Fans, medical professionals, and even fellow athletes all demanded explanations. How could a professional league allow something that appeared so careless to happen? Then came the heartbreaking injury to Sophie Cunningham. Once again, silence followed. Her knee gave out, and even experienced players looked away as the seriousness of the moment became clear. Rumors spread almost immediately. Career-ending. Devastating. Irreversible. Sophie, a fearless veteran who had dedicated years of her career to the league, was suddenly forced to face the possibility that she might never play again. Even then, the league showed no urgency, no clear plan, and no public statement. There was only an overwhelming silence where accountability should have existed. These were not simply isolated incidents. They became signs that the league's most valuable asset, its players, was not receiving the protection it deserved. Now the question has become impossible to ignore. Will the WNBA finally take meaningful action to protect its stars? Or will continued silence keep hurting the very women who helped build its future? In moments like these, silence can be even more damaging than the injuries themselves. 3 players. 3 devastating injuries. One unsettling pattern connecting them all. Silence. It was not the peaceful quiet of recovery or the stillness inside a locker room after a difficult loss. It was a cold, deliberate silence from the very league that should have stood beside them. Only silence. No accountability. No responsibility.
Take a moment to think about that.
If you believe these women deserve real answers and that their sacrifices mean far more than empty promises, let us know in the comments right now. Because this is about much more than basketball. It is about respect. To many fans, everything that followed felt like a betrayal. They had invested their money, their passion, and their unwavering belief in a league that promised growth, opportunity, and player safety. They purchased tickets, jerseys, and dreams. But when the moment mattered most, they were met with silence while the players they admired lay injured on the court. These women were never just names on a roster. They were the driving force that brought so many people to the WNBA in the first place. They filled arenas, energized crowds, and attracted an entirely new generation of fans. Yet when the physical cost of those sacrifices became impossible to ignore, the league failed to stand behind them. That silence carried more weight than any medical diagnosis. There was no visible urgency to protect the players who had given everything, no official clarity, and no meaningful updates. That absence felt like more than disappointment. It also felt disrespectful to the fans who had supported the league through every high and low. Silence matters. It reveals where priorities truly lie. And for Caitlin, Lexi, and Sophie, the message felt painfully clear. They were not receiving the care or protection expected for stars of their importance. Instead, they seemed to be treated as if they could simply be replaced. The betrayal reached far beyond a bruised body, a fractured eye socket, or a damaged knee. These women had fought through challenges, made enormous sacrifices, and helped build the league into what it is today. They created unforgettable moments, inspired a new generation, and brought incredible momentum to the sport. Yet when they needed support the most, the league failed to stand beside them. Fans who had once celebrated with excitement now filled timelines and comment sections with demands for accountability. Can the WNBA ever rebuild the trust that has been broken? Or has the damage already gone too far? The story continued. Behind polished highlight reels and carefully staged press conferences, a different reality was taking shape. Inside locker rooms across the league, frustration continued to grow. Quiet conversations slowly turned into passionate discussions. Players compared the injuries they had endured and the risks they had taken. Beyond the bruises and pain were stories of careers placed in danger, injuries that were overlooked, and rules that many believed had not been properly followed. To outsiders, everything appeared quiet. But it was never simply silence. A troubling pattern had begun to emerge. And patterns like this do not disappear on their own. They demand to be confronted. For Sophie Cunningham, the silence felt deeply personal. It carried the pain of feeling overlooked after years of sacrifice. For Lexi Hull, it was the painful realization that negligence may have worsened her eye injury and threatened her future. And for Caitlin Clark, the league's brightest rising star, the questions were only beginning.